A very good evening to you tuned in to SMART24 TV. You're welcome to Business Today. My name is Ronah Nahabwe with Winnie. We use the Nakawuki on the sign language. It's a Friday, the 23rd of December. We are getting closer to the 25th. And I would like to wish you a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year in advance. Now, in our first story tonight, Nadia Kanata, the head of Sustainable Development and Climate Policy at the European Union, has declared that at least 232 billion shillings was invested in Uganda's inclusive green economy in 2022. The Green Economy Dialogue projects aim at creating inclusive policy conditions for Uganda's transformation towards an inclusive green economy. Let's have a look.
In line with the European Union policies and the growing interest in partner countries, it presents options to support the green economy through dedicated interventions and integrations of green economy issues across relevant sectors, while providing relevant references and tools. It has therefore set aside 223 billion to support inclusive green economy in Uganda.
The NDCs are budgeted. This is a document that goes through a very broad consultation in the country, and it's a public document, and it was recently revised. In 22, the revised version was approved, yes. And if I'm not wrong, it has different scenario with different budgets. It has different scenario, you know, like you continue as usual, you can put more funds and do more.
To speed up the fight to counteract the effects of climate change, the European delegation to Uganda has also started involving young people on social media platforms. Nadia Kanata, who oversees sustainable development for the delegation, has emphasized the importance of an open social media quiz in disseminating knowledge about climate change. She was applauding the young people who had been most active in promoting climate change themes.
What is also very important is what we call the climate diplomacy. The climate diplomacy means communicating and giving visibility about all of this. And not only visibility because as European Union we want to give visibility to what we do with the country. And of course the country wants to give visibility about what we do together.
So this calls again upon all stakeholders, government, civil society, private sector, to put the pressure on all sides of the coin. Yes, natural forests were intended to provide other uses, and commercial forestry is supposed to provide the industrial wood.
The private sector is also encouraged to collaborate with public sector and civil society organizations in various initiatives in promoting the green economy. Pedson Mumbere, SMART24 TV, Business Today.
Now, away from that, members of parliament have ordered the administration to pay public employees' salaries before Christmas. This comes after the representatives from the Nakawuki district warned employees not to anticipate paychecks in December due to the shortages brought on by the increases in the pay of science teachers. Samla Hanifa reports.
Isingoma Mwesigwa, a member of parliament from the Hoima area, brought up the aforementioned problem when he informed the legislature that it was unfair that administration had opted not to release the paychecks for public employees in Nakawuki district.
Of Nakawuki, reporting that you will not be paying civil servants salaries for December and for December this year until I think mid or end of January. Right Honorable Speaker, even the other day I read a copy of a letter from my cow in Hoima, the same scenario. So Right Honorable Speaker, now that we are here and the two ministers of finance are here,
we have one minister of finance.
Okay.
Yeah. We have one minister of finance.
My elder brother Honorable Kasaija is here. Can we really know what's happening? Because this is too much.
The State Minister for Finance, Honorable Musasizi, responded to the concern by stating that while it is true that some districts are experiencing pay gaps for the month of December as a result of science teachers' compensation increases, they are currently consulting on how to resolve the situation.
It's true that some boards are finding challenges in paying salaries for December, and I wish to state as follows. A number of votes, especially local government, experienced wage shortfalls in Q1 of this financial year 2022-2023. This was largely attributed to salary enhancement for scientists and secondary school science teachers. As a result, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development provided additional resources for wage through supplementary funding to the affected votes.
On the other hand, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament and MPs have urged that the issue be resolved right away before Christmas and have asked that the Ministry of Public Service and the Department of Finance return after a short break with a resolution.
Why I still believe public service has a critical role to play. Salary is a statutory obligation. Finance does not have discretion on it. It doesn't. So on issues of discretion, I can agree. But on issues where finance, where we have no discretion, even we here, that's why that part of the budget is protected. We just pass it the way it is. So that one I shouldn't be having a much bigger problem. But let the Minister of Public Service come back here. Because the numbers and public service, the other day I told Prime Minister to hand a matter, which they have not. They are forcing me to appoint. I'm being pushed into a corner of appointing a select committee.
Upon their return, the two ministries informed the legislature that the problem of salaries will be addressed as soon as today. Minister Kasaija gave the legislature the assurance that he would personally notify the Deputy Speaker once the salaries were made public.
To err is human. To err. I think there is an English of that English saying in that direction. To make errors is human. And I want to tell this House explicitly now, please release me. I will make sure I will send a message to the Speaker exactly what is happening now vis-a-vis the subject matter we are talking about.
Honourable Minister, go and ensure that what you've committed here is implemented. Please.
Thank you.
Please, listen, Honourable colleagues. Honourable colleagues. Now, Honourable colleagues. Just, Honourable Minister, let me just assure Honourable colleagues. You see, we are talking about the deadline of today for people to get salaries. Now, the issues we are raising are issues which can be handled even in January. But now we want an emergency situation of helping colleagues.
Contrarily, the head of opposition has warned government about how it conducts itself to the point where Parliament must first step in for it to fulfill its duties.
Are you able to run government that we must remind you that you have a duty to pay salary, to come here and make phone calls? The other day, the Prime Minister was angry with me because I said she runs the government like a WhatsApp group. And this is the kind of thing that a member must rise to say, you have not paid salary. So, oh, let's make phone calls. Are you able to run government? You're not inspired. You are really insipid and you don't inspire confidence. People watching you trying to run government.
The Ministry of Finance has today presented the budget framework paper to the legislature, and it has been sent to the Sectoral Committee of Budget and other committees, which will scrutinize it and will be brought back to Parliament for the whole House to debate on the 31st of January next year. Samlanifa, SMART24 TV, Business Today.
As the Parliament struggles to pay its employees, the same Parliament has voted to retain and support the BMK Group of companies to construct medical facilities. This is in regards to the northern Uganda and the West Nile amid its reports by the Health Minister, Honorable Margaret Muhanga, over the company's inability to complete the work in time allocated to it. Let's have a look.
Parliament put an end to the dispute over the timely building of maternal health centers throughout the West Nile and the northern areas of Uganda when lawmakers chose to firmly support the report of the Committee on Health, which encouraged government to retain the BMK Group of companies.
He's one person who put efforts in the skilling of people in Katwe. And that is something that has been taken up by our technical schools. So as a process of paying back, we also as government should look at this. And I also want to say, I may say all of this, but as a former Secretary General of the ruling party, I want to say this, he was one person because of COVID who gave me accommodation with my team in BMK during the COVID time.
Visit West Nile and Northern Uganda to assess the scope of works executed by BMK Uganda Limited under the Uganda Reproductive, Maternal and Child Health Services Improvement Project. Lot 6 be adopted by the House. Those in favor say aye, and to the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
According to the MPs, the government frequently awards contracts to foreign businesses, even when they perform worse than BMK. However, it does not simply revoke these contracts, and officials don't see why they can't trust local investors to do the work.
What we are saying, what honorable colleagues are saying, honorable minister, is very simple, that indeed you might have challenges. We don't want to, honorable minister, I wish you could listen to me. Honorable minister, as the Minister for Health, okay? If we are to study your projects one by one, and we say the yardstick you have applied on BMK, apply it all, you would be shocked on what would come out. So what we are requesting you is simple, that support this local company.
On the other hand, the minister in charge of primary health care, Honorable Margaret Mohanga, told the legislature that BMK might not be able to finish building all the facilities in the allotted time and that the contract should be assigned to someone else, a request that was rejected by the lawmakers.
After that meeting, I think everybody got out knowing that BMK doesn't have the capacity to finish the work they gave them. Let me explain.
What the minister is telling us is information that is in the report. Because the ministry was given an opportunity to appear before the committee and put their side of the story. The committee processed that information from the ministry and information from other stakeholders, and they have come up with recommendations. Honorable Speaker, is it procedurally right for the Honorable Minister to come and regurgitate information that they already gave to the committee? Is it procedurally right?
It should be noted that on the 11th of November, the BMK family sent a letter to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Health disputing claims that the construction work is not yet finished. This gave the Permanent Secretary a reassurance that the task was 60% complete. Samlanifa, SMART24 TV, Parliament.
Now, away from that, the Ugandan President, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, His Excellency, recently announced that plans to build a new standard gauge rail linking the country's capital Kampala with the Kenyan border, raising hope for the completion of a similar link between Naivasha. Tanzania was recently awarded a $2.2 billion contract for the completion of its own standard gauge rail project. In a close interview with the Ministry of Finance, official looking into this progress, the official says that the project is being held back by it being intensive. Let's have a look.
Of the CEO forum, the atmosphere of business in Uganda is influenced to have education, because all these industries need an educated workforce. Educated, but I think what Msaz was saying, in addition to education, they also need skills of particular types. But with education, skills are easier to impart.
Upon the full implementation of the standard gauge railway, Uganda will be in a better position to take advantage of its advantageous location to facilitate cross-border trade, although traders are skeptical about the project's viability.
developing the railway network is critical for Uganda's growth and development because it is the major way of transporting cargo, especially. We are talking about trade here. So to lessen the burden on our roads, we really need to invest in that area, and I can assure you that government is quite committed.
The progress of the negotiations is still questioned by the citizens, particularly if other nations are still keeping their word.
We need them to get the SGR to the border. Currently it's around Nairobi. We're having discussions. Maybe they can take it to Kisumu. Then we can use the sea or the lake to actually transport from Port Bell to Kisumu or from Bokassa to Kisumu. So we're having discussions, but we're also having discussions on financing. It's a very expensive project, as you probably know, about an estimate from Malaba to Kampala of about $2.2 billion. So that would be by far the most expensive project we have undertaken. But we do recognize the importance of railway transport.
In order to facilitate travel from Mombasa Port, His Excellency signed a 5 billion shillings agreement with a Chinese company in May last year to modernize the century-old meter gauge railway line between Malaba and Kampala. He continues by saying that the meter gauge railway is nearly complete, which will make it easy to transfer goods inside the nation.
We are actually rehabilitating the meter gauge, the old railway, to foster links to Kampala from the border, but also to the northern part of Uganda. So that is actually a work that is ongoing, and that is what we are starting with for now as we wait for the SGR, but we do recognize the importance of that. The President has talked about railways quite frequently, and negotiations are ongoing. I want you to be very, very optimistic on that.
Since the multi-billion shilling standard gauge railway line from Mombasa ends in Naivasha, products headed for Uganda from Mombasa Port are currently there by road. There are concerns that the Mombasa-Naivasha standard gauge railway line, which is reported to have costed 447 billion shillings, including finance expenses, may not be financially sustainable if it is not connected to Kampala. Kenya had abandoned plans to expand the standard gauge railway to Kisumu and then to the Ugandan border. Therefore, the most recent decision by Uganda presents a new problem for Kenya. Ronah, Nahabwe, SMART24 TV, Business Today. Moving on, there was a significant impact on MSMEs caused by the COVID-19 lockout. Over 89% of MSMEs experienced a drop in turnover of over 49% because of the pandemic's effects on the consumer's demand. Martha Nimusima gives us a detail to this report.
The Ugandan MSME sector is notable because it accounts for around 90% of the private sector, more than 80% of manufactured goods, and contributes 75% to the country's GDP. And according to Uganda Bureau of Statistics, the sector employs about 3 million people consequently, and it ranks one of the largest employers in the nation. In this pandemic recovery period, the government is working with organizations to facilitate SMEs through programs like PDM, NETS, and Emyoga. For SMEs to succeed in this pandemic recovery period, procurement programs and marketing programs like Juakali and UMA exhibitions are used for rebranding, promoting products, and ensuring they survive.
Government is playing a big part in developing the policy and implementation of the policy. And these policies are through consultations with us as membership associations, and then the implementation, we also do it together. One of the biggest challenges that we face in this is the implementation bit. The policies are good done by government, but the implementation still has some gaps. And we believe we can do better if we are to have a linkage. Secondly, government finances SMEs through the different channels. They have had money put into Uganda Development Bank, Microfinance Support Center. We have the SME post-COVID funds into the different financial institutions. We have the parish development model. We have the Myoga funds. Government is putting a lot of finances into this. And one of our roles as private sector is to make sure that our people into the SME sector know which kind of finance and where they can be able to benefit from this.
To thrive during this period of pandemic recovery, a business must have a stable and progressive macroeconomic stability. This includes domestic demand and output, the balance of payments, fiscal revenues and expenditures, as well as saving and investment. This calls for Uganda's economy to graduate from informal to formal.
A good business performance hinges around a good macroeconomic management, macroeconomic stability generally, and how we assess macroeconomic stability is by looking at some of these common variables that we track. Things like economic growth, things like inflation. Those are the things that have a bearing on how businesses perform.
Small and medium-sized businesses economic instability, which is characterized by an economy that deviates from the equilibrium level and frequently results into market distortions. They should also make use of government initiatives and partner with advocacy NGOs to receive support. Martha Nimsima, SMART24 TV, Business Today.
Let's now look at agent banking. Agent banking has the ability to broaden and improve financial inclusion in Uganda. By bringing banking solutions to customers' doorsteps, agent banking as an alternative delivery is transforming the landscape. This reduces network duplication across agencies and increases points of presence to ensure coverage throughout the nation. In addition to economic advantages as it offers its customers, we do have details this report.
In order to increase their presence, particularly in the rural areas where brick and mortar branches are frequently expensive, banks may now offer additional services that were previously only available in the bank branches through the use of third parties. The fact that a consumer no longer needs to travel far to receive banking services is one of the instant advantages.
The bank agents handling corporate banking, well, then it goes into a definition of corporate banking, okay? But largely bank agents are handling smaller transactions, okay? Small deposits of up to 10 million shillings, account opening things, maybe conveying loan application forms, etc. Those are small retail transactions. That is largely, so agent banking is really for the retail end of the banking sector. But you will find that they are corporate customers, okay, say Mukwano Industries, for example, who might have outgrowers in Lira, okay, who need to buy input. And rather than walking into a bank to deposit on Mukwano's account, they can walk to an agent.
It is becoming more popular for a number of reasons, including product accessibility, risk management, and advancements in financial inclusion. Ugandans who live in locations without a commercial bank branch can now obtain official banking services owing to agency banking, which has dispatched a bank agent to their neighborhood. Bronia Katsime, SMART24 TV, Business Today.
Business Today will now take a short break, but we will return with an insightful conversation in our episode of Coffee Court. Don't go away.
SMART24, driving business.
Tiene batusa ko Christmas digida esokedde ddala ku resort beach Entebbe ku Christmas day nga 25 December 2022 ekulembeddwa Rema Namakula era mwe batimurema mwenna mwangu weeko Gravity omutuju tusimbudde omuyeru batakisi katero kabako wa stage Henry Ladies Choice Sauda Bagala Maulana and Rain batusese atenga gabagula w'ebyuma bya Balamu Sounds Christmas digida resort beach Entebbe singa mutwalo gumu Zoka ekutusibwako MTN.
Luxury redefined at Seasan Hotel as you indulge in the splendor of elegant living fit for the royalty that you are. Step into comfort, pampering and blissful customer-centric service as you select from our range of comfy exquisite living quarters furnished to meet with your royal preference. Surrounded by scenic beauty, Our tropical setting allows you to escape the glamorous ordeal of city life. Our ambient green gardens will guide you to a place of revitalizing rest. The 3-star restaurant caters to your palate, serving your choice menu ranging from exotic cuisines to local delicacies. Our chefs will serve you full-course meals for a truly out-of-this-world culinary experience. Our fully stocked bar to whet your throat, from renowned global brand whisks, brandies, gins, beers and wines to our locally celebrated beverages, you will not lack for any brewage. It's an all-new experience in the East at CSUN Hotel. So visit today at plot 15 to 19 Spire Road, Ginger, or contact us on +256 751 719 960 and +256 785 354 614 for reservations. CSUN Hotels, luxury redefined.
The taste of Uganda in a new international park.
Mukwano?
Yes?
I need you to help me watch the kids. I'm going to pay school fees.
I've finished.
Excuse me.
Relax. Sit down, watch TV. I've already paid.
Chikole for less, hakuna hassle, no stress. Whether night or day, tuli okay. Wangatuli ku flexi-pay.
Don't hustle to pay bills or send money. Chikole for less, ne flexi-pay. Hold it.
Chikole for less with FlexiPay. Dial *291# to transact or download the FlexiPay app to get started. Stanbic Bank. It can be. Stanbic Bank is regulated by the Bank of Uganda, and customer deposits are protected by the Deposit Protection Fund of Uganda up to 10 million shillings.
SMART24, driving business.
You're welcome back from that short commercial break, and thank you for sticking with us. Now, Private Sector Foundation Uganda is Uganda's apex body for the private sector. It comprises of over 200 business associations, corporate bodies, and the major public sector agencies that support private sector growth. Fred Makubia talks to us with Dr. Stephen Asimwe, the Chief Executive Officer, about the sector performance in our tonight's episode of Coffee Court.
Well, my pleasure this evening on the Coffee Court. Welcome to this Coffee Court where we ask the critical questions, most importantly, questions that matter. Of course, as the year comes to an end, we weigh in on the performance, the ups and downs when it comes to the Private Sector Foundation. And joining me to paint this picture is the Chief Executive Officer. This is Dr. Stephen Asimwe. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, Fred, and good evening, viewers.
Thank you so much. You've just selected a new board, isn't it?
Yes.
Maybe to bring us to speed, what are the new board members?
The PSFU every 3 years undergoes a corporate governance change. So by our constitution, a board member is elected once, renewable once, meaning that if you come back, you serve a 3-year term, and if your electorate, which is basically comprised of 12 sectors,
okay,
re-elects you, then you are eligible one more time. So to put in context, you can serve for 6 years and then you don't come back.
Okay.
So this last board we had was led by Honorable Eli Karahanga, and the new board now, by virtue of the governance structure, is now being led by Mr. Humphrey Nzei, who is from the manufacturing sector.
Okay.
And so he's our new board chairman. And we had about 4 or 5 outgoing members, which means then that we now have another 5 new members coming on board.
Okay.
Yes.
So we are winding up the year. To some people, it's been a year of blessing. And some other people, it's a year of curses. Let me weigh in on the positive side when it comes to your performance as the private sector foundation.
That's a good question. PSFU has two levels of performance. The first level of performance is the institutional performance. As an institution, we've undergone a lot of changes, positive changes. We've done a restructuring, we've done a revamping, we are doing a strategy, and we should be rolling it out next year.
Okay.
We have reorganized and recalibrated our manuals, our systems, our structures, our staffing. PSFU has one of the best led institutions in this country. Very, very highly experienced, trained, young, versatile, professional people.
What confirms this?
You can confirm this by our profile. If you did a balanced scorecard on our HR and our people structure, it's one of the best. And I've led many institutions in this country and in the region. I think that PSFU provides one of that.
Okay.
So as an institution, at that level, I think we've really made a lot of strides. Moreover, coming out of a situation where we had lost our CEO last year and the challenges that we went through during COVID.
Okay.
So that's one level. The second level is that when His Excellency the President opened up the economy in January, our GDP performance had been halved from about 6-point-something to 3. And all of that was attributed to the challenges of COVID.
Okay.
We started there with a bang, with the opening at the end of January. Of course, unfortunately, we had all this invasion of Ukraine and the spillovers of the supply chain issues that affected the COVID time globally. The good news is that the economy began to pick up like a car which is just starting. So you start with gear 1, 2, 3, and then we are now rolling to 4 and 5.
So you're suggesting that the economy has picked up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
The economy has picked up, although it picked up on the backdrop of challenges.
Which sectors have picked up?
I think all of them. What we need to be careful is how have they picked up. I think all of them picked up. The challenge was that many of them were injured as a result of the impact of COVID-19 that affected all businesses. The challenge again was that people did not have enough money in their pockets to buy, and that affected who was selling. So supply-demand challenges. But of course, as schools opened, so you had more students going back to school, more food, more uniform. The challenge was those who were supplying were either financially bankrupt, heavily indebted, many businesses closed, but also we were able to negotiate with banks and government, and one of the biggest things that we achieved was that we were able to convince government not to introduce new taxes.
Which
in
they
the last
did
budget.
score.
Yes.
If you allude to that, business for people are not yet in debt. One listening to us would actually think we are telling lies.
No, they're indebted.
Many people are still
indebted. Absolutely. Everybody was indebted, including the banks, which were lending. They were indebted because they were not lending. You see, a bank is also a business. Shareholders put money in a bank with the biggest hope that the money will be lent and what comes back as interest will be accrued as profit. So don't get me wrong, everybody was indebted, even the government.
So the hopes that many of us had, if we were not to run to government, would run to private sector foundation. And many of us think you have actually been silent about some of these issues.
No, we can't be silent. The budget had budget proposals. 74% of what we gave government as proposals were adopted out of 100, which was the first time in the history of this country.
What are these proposals, Doctor?
They range from everything from no new taxes to incentives to the need for intervention in the lending regime, extending the repayment period, as opposed more support for private businesses through lower collateral, more money that would be accessed. We pushed for heavy uptake or support for money from UDB, microfinance institutions. They need to open the borders had been a problem. Things like requirements for people to have COVID tests, for instance, at the airport. In tourism, there was a very strict regime of how tourists would access the country.
I would think
we removed all of that.
Those have been of help to probably the CEOs that head institutions, but to the Muntu ones, the
Muntu ones see benefits from every visitor who comes into the country. Tourism up to 2019 was the #1 foreign exchange earner, bringing 10% of GDP. So by the fact that you opened the skies so that everybody would come into the country meant that when the tourists or the visitor comes into the country, everybody earns money at every value chain. The transporter, the man at the visa office, the person who receives them at the hotel. Every time they go out, they spend money. The way money works is someone has to buy, another one has to sell. So the more buyers you have, the more sellers you have, and therefore the money spreads into the economy. And in very, very basic terms, that's what we've been pushing for. We need more money to be circulating back and forth so that people earn, others sell, and that way everybody gets a share of the action.
Isn't it a lie, really? You talk about an economy which has had unpredictable central bank rates. Today it is going high, and chances of it getting down are actually normal. We're talking about the inflation rate, which keeps on going to 10.8. Now we are at 10.7. So that's the economy you are talking about, which has been positive on the business community.
Well, in mathematics, we say that if you're coming from sub-zero and you make a 10% leap, you're better than the guy who has moved from +1 to +2.
As long as you can predict where you're going. So this is an unpredictable...
Yes, in many ways than one. Again, it's like a hospital patient. The worst case scenario, you're in intensive care. If you get better, you go to high dependence unit. And from high dependence unit, you go to close observation. That's how economies work. The whole country suffered, collapsed completely. And it was not just a Ugandan problem. It was an East African problem. It was an African problem. It was a global problem. To the extent that the whole world shut down. Now, when we opened, we were one of the few countries that was able to balance between life and livelihood. We lost so many people.
That is true.
Very useful people. Everybody who died during COVID was a useful person, including we were one of the biggest hit victims. PSFU lost an executive director. And that is not a small thing. But the fact that we were now able to save others who could have died, in my view, was a huge achievement, and we want to thank government for that. But then it was necessary that we balance, that you can't lock for too long, otherwise you'll all die because of all these pressures that you're talking about. In my view, I think that was a major achievement. And the fact that we have managed to crawl slowly out of the dark hole into some light is a level of achievement. Can we do more? Of course we can.
Are you saying we're still at a level of growing as an economy, or we've moved past that? From your view as the person in charge of the private sector?
In my view, I think that we have made a lot of strides in coming out of what was the worst case scenario. Now, as a result of COVID-19 and the lockdown, businesses collapsed, shut down, and many were impaired. The fact that they can, and many have been resuscitated in one way or another, others have actually re-engineered themselves. So for instance, some people got new opportunities during COVID. You know, once upon a time there was no sterilizer. Oxygen manufacturers, people going into health. The health sector made a lot of money as a result of more patients coming and the need for intervention.
Okay.
What we were never prepared for was an epidemic of this scale. I mean, we were never, nobody ever knew that one day a disease will kill the whole world. And it also showed we were very interdependent. But what was still unfortunate in our view is that Uganda, more than any country, has now had Ebola singularly. And this has affected our performance, at least in the last 18 or so weeks.
And now we are past that.
We are getting out of it, but it also injured us very many ways. But I want to be optimistic that 2023 is going to be a good year. For reasons that where we are now is better than where we were, what we call a year in, year out perspective. We were not like this as of December 2021.
So what informs your prediction?
My prediction is very obvious, that the economy is open, that buying and selling is now a norm, and the fact that many of our development partners have come on the table with us, both government and private sector.
Okay.
I will tell you that in this last year alone, Private Sector Foundation decided to look at markets. We went to Kenya, we went to Burundi, we went to Tanzania, we went to DRC, we went to South Sudan. DRC joined us as a member of the East African community.
Okay.
We are now looking at Somalia, we're looking at United Arab Emirates, we've just come from Vietnam, our teams are in Washington, DC and America. We are beginning to open our markets to the external opportunities that are available for export.
So how does I am concerned about the Muntu because he subscribes to the apex body, which is a PSFU.
Yes.
You have people from UZIA, you have people from Federation, you have people from Chamber of Commerce. All these associations
institutions.
If I am an investor, from whichever point you would want to pick it from, and I want to invest my money in the next coming year, what would you advise me as somebody in charge of the Private Sector Foundation?
One, I would advise you to invest in information.
Do I eat information?
That information is power. It's important that when you are making an investment, you make an investment with an informed position.
So how does it...
At PSFU, we help with business development services, and we also can direct you to the best advisory services you would want. One of the things we clearly and strongly recommend is that you become a member. You subscribe to PSFU's membership base so that we can point you into the direction of the 12 sectors that we oversee.
So you talked about information?
Yes,
okay.
Information and information asymmetry. The second thing is that many sectors are productive The third issue is...
Which sector to be
I will tell you, largely speaking, all the sectors are productive. It is where your competence base provides for an enabling environment. So, for instance, if you're an IT person, I cannot tell you to go outside IT, or if you have an IT supportive element. So largely speaking, you can come to us at PSFU. We have a research team, we have a business development team, we have a membership team, and we can help support you in that area.
So those are only two sectors. You talked about information.
No, you see, information is what will facilitate where you invest. But like I said, broadly speaking, the economy is a great place to be it in manufacturing, agriculture, ICT, tourism and hospitality, in logistics and transport, creative arts, in the music industry, huge business, in health, in education, in trade, in oil and gas, minerals and extractives. I mean, Uganda is a great place to invest in, and we have it there, and therefore everybody can come and be a part of this discussion.
Mr. Bruno, there is coming to an end. Your parting shot or your final message to Ugandans out there that subscribes to the Private Sector Foundation, Mr. CEO.
First of all, I want to thank all the business people, whether or not you are part of PSFU, that you have been resilient and that you have been part and parcel of ensuring that this economy grows. I want to thank government. I want to thank all the people who watch SMART24 TV. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, but most importantly, statistics have shown that the largest number of people in hospitals are accident victims. I would like to call upon all the Ugandans to be careful while driving on the road. Our people who ride border borders, please ride carefully. Christmas and the New Year are times when everybody is excited. Please drive carefully, drive slowly. We've lost so many people, and therefore it's important that that we become good and responsible road users. And so drive, keep safe, and next year is going to be a fantastic year. And come to PSFU for anything related to business. Thank you very much.
Well, a good leader is one who does not only point you where you're coming from, but also tells you or makes a prediction of where you're heading. Dr. Stephen Asimwe, thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you, Fred.
He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. And that is it from the Coffee Court. My name is Nakawuki Fred.
That insightful conversation leads us to the end of business today. But of course, I would also like to add my voice that as we celebrate these festives, may we not forget and be reckless with our lives, because we only have one life. My name is Ronah Nahabwe with Winnie and Nakawuki. Have a good night and Merry Christmas.
SMART24, driving business.